Welcome everyone. You're watching The Cup That Matters. I'm Shivani Gupta. Joining me on the show today, two-time World Cup winner Andrew Symond. And next to him is perhaps an odd character on a sports show, but with very interesting book coming up, Crickonomics. Rather, it's already out. Yeah. Co-author of Crickonomics, Surjit Bhalla. We'll also be going across to Melbourne, where former India captain Sourav Ganguly will join us to talk more about the brilliant win that the Kiwis have managed today. Let's get you the updates from that win first. Brendan McCullum smashed the fastest 50 in a World Cup as New Zealand beat England by 8 wickets at Wellington, their third consecutive win in the 2015 World Cup. McCullum went berserk, really, smashing 50 in just 18 deliveries. In fact, he broke his own record of 52 of 20 balls, which he scored against Canada in the 2007 World Cup. McCullum took charge right from the start, hitting a 6 off his second delivery. He reached the landmark in some style too, with a huge 6 over point as thousands in Wellington erupted. What an innings, really, by this opener. He smashed 8 boundaries and 7 sixes to post 77 in just 25 balls. His innings was ultimately brought to an end by Chris Woakes. Earlier in the day, Tim Southee wreaked havoc, picking up 7 wickets as England were bowled out for just 123. Southee ripped through the England batting lineup to register his career best figures. Only Joe Root fought a lone battle, scoring 46. So a third consecutive win for New Zealand, McCullum the record breaker. But it was really Tim Southee who was named the man of the match for his spell that brought the English batting lineup to its knees. A great win by the Kiwis over a sorry English side. Take a look at what England's Ashes rival and Australian opener Chris Rogers had to say about the loss in a Headlines Today exclusive.
I think it looks like England have hit rock bottom at the moment, and New Zealand are playing as good as cricket as they possibly can. So, yeah, it's a tremendous boost for New Zealand, but you know, from the time I've spent in England and knowing what their media and their public are like, I think there's going to be a lot of pain for that England side, and I would expect a lot of changes. So, yeah, not happy times for England at all.
So, Andrew, barely a week into the World Cup, New Zealand have already managed 3 wins, almost, I mean, they're through, all but through for the quarterfinals, reminding everyone why they're rated so high this World Cup.
Yeah, they're playing some fine cricket. They're enjoying playing in their home country. You know, they've got quite a parochial type crowd, and they can be quite an aggressive crowd having played there.
You know very well, isn't it? Yeah. The Kiwi-Australian rivalry especially.
Yeah, our rivalry, the Anzac rivalry is very high.
Yeah.
You know, we played there one year, and Michael Bevan had a fish
thrown at him.
About that long, thrown at him when he was fielding on the boundary, and throw lumps of concrete and coins, and so it's can be quite a sort of intimidating place to play if you let things get the better of you. But they're playing some fine cricket. They're batting well, bowling well, and fielding well. So the 3 components of the game they're putting together.
And McCullum, of course, we sometimes forget about him because he's been around for so long, but just reminding us just how dangerous he is. So, you know, he's in that list with AB de Villiers, Virat Kohli and the others.
Yeah, he's a damaging player.
Yeah.
You know, if he bats for 10 overs, the whole face of the game changes. Yeah. So, yeah, very damaging player, and he's playing well, you know.
Let me go across to Sourav Ganguly as well, whom we spoke to earlier. Sourav, first things first, were you surprised by England's performance in this match?
Yeah, I was surprised with England's performance. It looked like a performance without heart, and England have to play better in one-day cricket. They play so well in test matches, and I don't know what happens with them in one-day cricket. It's an area where they really have to introspect, because you can't get all out in 50 overs game for 125 and then lose a game in 10 overs. So definitely there's something wrong there. They made a wrong decision in Melbourne, where they won the toss and decided to field against Australia, and Australia batted them out of the game. So they're really thinking wrongly in terms of their one-day cricket, and something needs to be done.
Incredibly, this is happening despite the fact that England, I think for the first time, haven't played the Ashes coming into the World Cup. They've changed that because most of the time they come into the World Cup really jaded, yet no good performances so far. A word on New Zealand, the other incredible performance by them. They are certainly one of the favourites to win this Cup, especially at home, and they're showing just why.
Oh yeah, incredible. You know, they've gone through the whole of last 3-4 months without losing a game. they've beaten anyone and everyone in one-day cricket, in test matches, and I think it was apparent that they would play in the World Cup well, and that's the reason a lot of the players and a lot of people who've been following this World Cup has termed them as favourites, and the way they have gone about in the first 3 games, and 2 of them were big games, England and Sri Lanka. I am not surprised with what I've seen.
All right, Saurav Ganguly, thanks a lot for joining us from Melbourne. Of course, you can keep watching Saurav's analysis and the big preview to the South Africa game as well. But this is where I shift to Surjit Bhalla, co-author of Crickonomics. Surjit, just show your book to everyone and tell us the concept behind this book. First, why you wrote and what is it that readers will find in this book? You predict, amongst other things, the World Cup winner in this one.
That's right. And we've done it for the past as well. No, the concept behind this book is that the uncertainty in cricket, the glorious uncertainties, sometimes it's not so uncertain. That is, that you can actually evaluate batsmen, bowlers, teams, pitches, and therefore, based on performance, predict how they're going to do. So that's one of the, and we have, if you will, a dynamic score predictor, which is available on www.crickonomics.com, easy to remember. And what that does is, as the game is progressing, it says how fast or what is the score that the team is likely to have and what's their probability of winning at each stage of the game. But the larger issue here is basically how to evaluate cricketers. Just like, we have an index of tennis players, etc., who's the greatest, and we have gone to great efforts to try and distinguish between the best and the greatest. Andrew Symond, if you will, turns out to be the #4 greatest ODI batsman.
Of all time.
Of all time. And #1 is Richards, #2 is Tendulkar, #3 is De Villiers, and #4 is none other than him.
Andrew, you're higher than Don Bradman himself.
Don never played one.
Nobody's higher than Don Bradman.
Okay,
Nobody's higher than Don.
No.
And that's Test cricket.
Okay.
But
so Test cricket is separate. You were talking about the one-day list.
Only one-day cricket.
All right. But
actually.
#4 is quite high, isn't it?
Yeah, I like this book.
You like this, huh? I think you'll like it even more when you read it. But seriously, it is an attempt to predict matches. It's an attempt to evaluate players and have fun with
So
statistics.
let me ask you this. Why Viv Richards above Sachin Tendulkar and why AB de Villiers as high as #3?
Okay. So there are 2 concepts over here. Basically, and what we look at are various attributes for batsmen and various attributes for bowlers. And actually, one of the interesting things that emerged from this book is that there's an equivalence. For the batsmen, there's a strike rate and the average, and for the bowlers, there is the runs per over, and you as an all-rounder, runs per over, and if you will, runs per, the average runs per wicket. And we show that there is a clean equivalence between these 2 concepts. So we look at this as to how they've done, and an important part, obviously, is the strength of the team with which you are playing.
Yeah.
So if you score more against New Zealand, or Australia, that goes higher to your credit and not. But now let me come to the question of Tendulkar versus Vivian Richards. This has to do with the, if you will, Vivian Richards' strike rate average across the board is higher than Tendulkar. So that's an easy one. The interesting thing is that Tendulkar played a lot longer than Vivian Richards did. And how do you account for the fact longevity? And if you will, longevity at a very high level, not as if you played a long time. And that's where the concept of the greatest comes in. The greatest has to do with domination of the game. Tendulkar very clearly dominated the game, if you will, just a notch below Vivian Richards, but and they're quite close actually, the 2. De Villiers and I think Kohli are the 2 players, 2 batsmen to watch for the future.
So where would Kohli be right now?
Kohli is, I think, amongst the present players, is about #1 or #2. #1 is De Villiers. #1 is De Villiers.
And Hashim Amla is #2, if I'm not incorrect.
Yeah, I think so.
Kohli's
it's a very close fight,
now.
and actually, if you look at the index and we present what is the batting index, etc., they're very, very close.
Let's quickly move to this World Cup. You've made certain predictions. When the book, if you read the book, obviously New Zealand doesn't feature very highly, not in the top 4 to make it to the semis, but you've revised that, and your top favourites now are Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and one amongst India and Sri Lanka, I believe.
And England.
And England.
But this was...
Maybe after, not after
that is the thing. We update after every match as to what the relative rankings of the team is. What's the success you've
had so far?
But let me, at the time this book was written and finished was November 24th. And which was the fourth team, if you will, apart from Australia and...
Was Sri Lanka at that time.
Sri Lanka was India. India has gone down over time, and Sri Lanka has gone down over time, and New Zealand over the last 2-3 months, they've been hammering away. So I think New Zealand has skyrocketed. So the interesting thing, if the other big factor is that home team advantage adds about 8 percentage points to the probability of you winning.
So you're saying in this book, or rather in your updated statistics, 25 to 30% chance it will be an Australia-New Zealand final. Andrew, you agree with that? That's actually the prediction most are making, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, early form in this World Cup suggests that Australia are playing well, New Zealand are playing very well. But there's still a long time to go. And generally you find in the World Cup that you've got to peak at the right time.
Yeah, in the knockouts.
That's right. You lose... If you lose one game in the World Cup, you can miss out on playing a final. But you can lose one game in the early stages and win a World Cup. So it's all about getting your timing right, I believe, and your team and your individuals, your key individuals, getting themselves to their peak at the right time in the competition.
And in that final, if it is an Australia-New Zealand final, you give more marks to Australia because they will have the home advantage because the final will be played in Melbourne.
And, that's 8%. So it's quite a bit. So basically a 50-50 match turns out to be 58-42. So this is a huge factor, having a home team advantage. But if you look at the three teams, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa, if you take out home team advantage, they're neck to neck. So it is any day, any pick between these three. Then there's a big drop. With coming up with India at number 4 and the rest falling behind.
All right, very quick. Go ahead.
No, so the result of tomorrow's India-South Africa game will obviously rejig the whole equation again.
Oh, absolutely. So each match update. Now, if India is not expected to beat South Africa.
I was just going to come to that. Just tell us why you think India doesn't have a chance. In fact, in your score prediction, if India bats first, they make 307. If South Africa bat first, they make 337. So you've given 30 more runs to South Africa.
Basically that. And no, they have, I think, really, as an Indian, it's a bit hard for me to admit this, but basically South Africa is, I think, a much better side than India. Look at their batsmen, look at their bowlers. We have a very weak bowling attack. We have fantastic batsmen. But if we had if you will, 1 or 2 bowlers, just one bowler, then I think it would be close to even. Right now we're giving South Africa about 60-40 advantage.
Well, we'll take that. 60-40 is all right. It's not a bad place to start, isn't it? No. Surjit Bhalla, thanks a lot for joining us, and hopefully I'll be getting a copy of this book. And one for Andrew for sure.
And one for Andrew as well.
Because he's number 4 on the all-time ODI list. That's really some place to be. Team India hit the nets for an intense practice session ahead of their big match against South Africa on Sunday. What was interesting to see is that the team tried to replicate real match situations with the field spread out. Good news is that there was no absentee, with Bhuvneshwar Kumar also involved in the practice session, which was overseen by coach Duncan Fletcher and team director Ravi Shastri. Both were giving crucial tips to all the players. But all eyes were on Virat Kohli, who spotted a new look. Kohli has been the talk of the town this World Cup, and this time because of his new hairstyle. Following in the footsteps of international superstar Cristiano Ronaldo, Kohli upped his style quotient before the big game. Let's hope it works for his batting too.
It was an intense practice session for Team India. Trying to replicate a match-like situation, the players tried to punch off the back foot, obviously trying to get prepared for the MCG bounce. What was interesting yesterday in the South African practice was to see Morne Morkel trying Yorkers. Today the Indians had a 6'4" local fast bowler, Nathan Patrick, to try and nullify the Morne Morkel factor. So clearly the think tank is working. The Pakistan game has done wonders to the confidence. And if the body language is to be believed, India should mount a challenge against South Africa. Yes, they have a poor record, not 3, but come Sunday, it can all be redeemed at the MCG. With camera person Manish Mathur, it's Boria Majumdar in Melbourne for Headlines Today.